Today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of an effective fundraising appeal. Um, and we're going to specifically talk about the email channel here and how we best are able to reach, communicate with, and build trust with people through the channel of email. Thanks everybody for joining today. There's a ton of people on this call. And I'm excited because that means that people aren't satisfied with what you're getting out of your email fundraising results. I'm going to show you today through a lot of research and proven experiments, statistically valid experiments, how we can improve our fundraising results and get better results out of the same channels that we've been using. One of the best things about optimization is that you can get better return out of what you already have. And I've worked in nonprofits, and I understand that nonprofits always have limited resources, but the great thing about optimization is it doesn't take more resources, it just takes seeing things with new eyes and learning to look at fundraising differently. Let's talk about email really quick. We've got the Gmail logo here. You may be subject to a boss or a CEO or somebody who comes into your office all the time and says, hey, why aren't we using the latest social platform like Snapchat or Periscope or Flickr even, I think is down there in the corner, to raise money? Why are we sending so many emails? Someone who is not an email marketer might think like this, and someone who might not be that savvy, might think that email is something that's tired. It's been around since the late 80s actually, and popular culture is used all the way back to the 70s in kind of the tech field. There's really good case for using email fundraising, and it's that email is the #1 driver of revenue for almost every nonprofit we've ever looked at, in terms of online revenue, I should say. Here's an example of some client revenue. There's millions and millions of dollars at stake here. You see two metrics here. Traffic is the blue line. So they're getting lots of traffic from things like organic search, getting traffic from radio, they're getting traffic from Facebook. By far, their biggest source of traffic and revenue is email. Here's another client. They get a lot more traffic to their website than they do from email. But the thing is that email outranks it, 10 or more to 1 in terms of revenue. Here's one more client. Gets a lot of revenue from organic search and a lot of traffic from organic search, but at a fraction of the traffic, they get more revenue from email. We always say that from what we found in all of our research, over 700 tests, the greatest indicator of your online fundraising power is the size and quality of your email list. So email may feel old to some folks, but it's incredibly powerful. So you may want to grab those slides the next time someone walks in and tries to get you to sign up on an account for the latest and greatest social media platform, where they've heard that X organization is raising millions of dollars. And you can say, hey, let's focus on what works. We don't have a lot of time, we don't have a lot of resources, so let's focus all of our energies on what is driving the most revenue. Emails, it's a funny thing too, the size and quality of your email list, two factors there. It can't just be a huge list. We worked with a lot of organizations who say, we have this huge list and we're not raising money. And the truth is, it's because most of them are either tuned out, they're not great prospects, they don't have great fundraising potential, or they've deactivated and haven't opened emails recently. So you have this huge file, but no one's actually opening the emails. And so size and quality are two important factors there as we think about this. Email fundraising is one of the few proactive channels that we have, and it's a way that you can get in anybody's inbox. When you need to raise money, where do you go? You're not going to go to post something to your million fans on Facebook that only 100 of those people might see it. You're going to shoot an email out, just in the same way that you might send an email out if you needed help. You might send an email or a text out to to your friends and say, hey, I need help with something. If you're trying to get help moving your house per se, you might send an email out to a list of friends who could come help you move houses. We have some folks in our office moving houses right now, and I've received a couple of those emails. But the reason there's an important lesson I want to take there, and that's that sometimes we as marketers use email differently than we might use it personally. And I think I'm going to show you some research today that suggests that maybe we actually need to look at how people actually use email in the right contexts and for the right reasons. Now, you may say, my email list is not very big. The good news is we have some resources for that on our website at nextafter.com. You can get some resources about how to grow your email list. Sometimes your email performance and your email fundraising results aren't that great just because your list is not that big. So two things here. One is an ebook called 6 Ways to Grow Your Email File through Optimizing Email Acquisition, and another is called Turning Likes into Donors, the definitive guide for Facebook advertising for nonprofits. So if you need to grow your file, 2 resources there, but today we're going to talk about how to activate your file and what a successful fundraising appeal looks like and how to look at fundraising email appeals differently. To start, though, I want to talk about this concept of the marketing funnel. You may have seen this in different presentations from Tim Kachuriak, myself, but I want to be very clear because this is kind of a theoretical approach to understanding what's actually happening when we're sending an email appeal, what we're trying to do at kind of a macro level. So this is the traditional way that I used to think about the online donor funnel. It looks very similar to what you might call an online marketing funnel too. But it is, it's this funnel, which is a great metaphor. You got all this traffic coming in from different places. You see you're sending some traffic here from email campaigns, from social media, from banners. You're trying to move people from interest to involvement to investment, trying to get all this traffic and turn them into prospects. So registered users, get their email addresses. Then you want to convert those registered users into donors, right? And then you want to convert those donors into recurring donors or major donors or lifelong advocates. And this is how I used to think about marketing. And met these guys from an organization called Mech Labs, and they kind of gave me a new perspective of the funnel. They said, first of all, the funnel is helpful. It's a primary analogy because all marketing should be leading people to a decision. Your marketing should not just be there to just communicate. It should be leading people to influence a decision. So the problem, though, is that the funnel distorts reality. Your funnel is not like this where people are falling into it. Your funnel is actually inverted. So people are falling out of it because gravity, or the natural market forces that are out there, attention is a great one, is not leading more people to want to be involved in your cause. People don't wake up and say, where can I go give my money away today? Especially in fundraising. Even in the for-profit world, though, people don't wake up and say, I need to go purchase some products. What products should I purchase? They're actually being dragged away by other marketers, by other products, by better marketers. And so we have to realize that people aren't falling into our funnel, they're falling out of it, and it must be inverted. And the truth is, they're not all traveling up this path at the center. They're coming up different paths, too. People have different ways in. They have different avenues to learn about our organization and to move towards this top of the funnel. And if the top of the funnel is what we call our macro yes, or the ultimate decision, we're going to have to drive them with that funnel with something, and that is our message. We've realized something in looking at this, too. This isn't really maybe best expressed as a donor funnel. Actually, a lot of interesting ways to look at it. If you look at a donor mountain, if you call it a mountain, you flip it upside down, it kind of resembles a mountain, right? And so you have this mountain. At the top, you have your macro yes, and we have to remember that our prospects, these people who we're trying to market to, they don't have the same perspective that we do. They're down here at the very bottom of the mountain. Sometimes they haven't even started to climb, right? They're out just living their lives, and we need to reach these people and show them what we can see from the top of the mountain. We have this this perspective as fundraisers where we know the good work that your nonprofit is doing. You know the impact and you see it. But the problem is our prospects don't see that, so we have to help them understand that. And if we want to get them to their what we call the flag at the top, what we call the macro yes, which in this case is a donation, there's a series of micro yeses they have to accept before they get to that macro yes. And so we want people to if I send an email per se, the first thing I have to do in that email is have to make a decision whether or not to open it. So the subject line is the first kind of micro yes. Is this interesting to me? Then if I read the email, it's compelling, I have to make another decision. Do I want to take any more time and spend any more time with this and click through the landing page? The landing page has images, it has a headline, it has copy, and choosing to read each one of those is a micro yes. Then if I want to give, I might start this donation process, and maybe it's a 5-step donation process, and I decide I just don't have time for that right now. So there's times when we must convince people to take all of these micro yeses as they advance towards our macro yes. No one just instantly makes a snap decision, yes, I'm going to give, unless they're already what we call pre-converted. They already have some sort of relationship with you. Most of your prospects don't have that, and they're looking for, honestly, a reason to delete your emails. Even your good prospect, people who care about your cause. Remember, the funnel is inverted. They are not falling down into your funnel. They're falling out of it. So they're being dragged away by maybe it's a crying baby or something like that. I have a couple of those at my house. So there's all sorts of market forces working against this. We have to maintain this perspective of the donor mountain if we're going to have a proper understanding of what's actually happening when we're sending emails. So we stand at the top of the mountain. The good news is as marketers, we can kind of map this process out, and we can hold this map. And we have something that we can actually propel people and use to help them up the mountain. It's a rope, right? And the rope is what we call the value proposition. People are constantly weighing a decision as they work up your donor mountain, right? They're trying to say, what is the value here and what is the cost? And they're weighing these two things. And if at any point the value is outweighed by the cost, you get a no to that micro yes, and they have left your funnel. So if they look at your subject line and they say, you know what, I perceive that this has a cost of maybe my time that is greater than I'm willing to give right now, and so they archive your email or delete it or refuse to open it. They're prioritizing their inbox. You do it too. I did it this morning when I woke up and came to work and first looked at my inbox. I said, hey, what are the most important things that I've got to handle right now? So we have to make sure that we are taking these micro yeses where we have a cost that outweighs the value and properly flipping them to where the value outweighs the cost, to where they look at this and say, you know what, like, I have other things I could be doing, but this is really, really important. And the interesting thing about email specifically is that email relies on not only increasing the value over the cost, but also increasing trust as people move up this donor mountain. Email demands trust for a couple of reasons. Number one, it demands trust because the recipient has a rare power over the marketer. It's really unlike most advertising channels. They can click this button, and all of a sudden you don't get to hear from them anymore. You guys may remember back in 1999, there's a really powerful book published by Seth Godin called Permission Marketing. He defines it as this: said, permission marketing is the privilege, not the right, of delivering anticipated, personal, and relevant messages to people who actually want to get them. So that's a power of email, right? So marketers have power because people who have opted into their emails have said yes. They've raised their hands and said, yes, I want to receive email from you. But then the marketer also has the responsibility to uphold that trust and say, I won't, I'm not going to abuse this relationship. I'm going to take this relationship seriously. I'm going to communicate with you in a real way. So there's a mutual trust factor that happens there. You can't unsubscribe from other marketing. Could you unsubscribe from a TV? Well, maybe you could turn it off. But you might not get the value out of it either. Can you unsubscribe from a billboard? Not really. Maybe you could look away if you wanted to, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be there. So email has a primary function that holds marketers in check, and as fundraisers and also marketers, we have to make sure that we are honoring this commitment that we've made to these folks, because it's a mutual commitment. Second, email marketing demands trust because the context can be quite revealing for bad marketers. Let me show you what I mean. This is actually a snapshot of my inbox from this morning. So I've got email from my friend Brian, my friend Christy. I've got a marketing email from Dr. Arn at Hillsdale College. And then I've got this thing that pops out from Sonos, right? So I've got emails from all of these different people, and then all of a sudden I have an email from a company that is sending me something, right? So like I said, context in this case can be quite revealing for bad marketers. Sometimes we forget from our side when we're sending an email that the person who receives it is going to receive it in a context much like this. And they should trust your company, which people can trust brands. It's not unheard of. But they're going to be receiving email in an inbox that is surrounded by email from people they actually know and work with every day. Maybe they do know you, but you have to uphold that level of trust and understand the context that your recipients are receiving these emails. These may seem like small things, but they matter a whole lot to us as fundraisers. Look at this picture. These people are down, kind of at the bottom of the mountain, and you have to ask yourself, like, do they trust their guide? Like, it's very easy to trust somebody when you're in the initial stages. So opening an email, doesn't require a whole lot of trust, but we have to remember where we're trying to get them to go. We're trying to get them to ascend to this mountain and take all of these little micro steps in their mind to give us a donation. right? We're asking for a donation. By the time you get to the top of the mountain, things get really steep. And you say, hey, do you trust this person? Do you trust the guide? I hope so. I hope the guy down at the top here trusts the guy below him to catch him when he falls. Because as people ascend this mountain and they start building trust, we're taking people from skepticism, to belief. And the avenue that's going to get us there is trust. So today, as we talk about the anatomy of a effective email appeal, I want to kind of give effectiveness some clarity in saying effectiveness means, number one, we get results from them because we must be results oriented as marketers. But number two, it means that we get results because people trust us. So we have this inbox that we signed up for a lot of marketing offers for a couple of years ago in our online fundraising scorecard study. Now has tens of thousands of emails. It gets emails, every few minutes. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mine this box for some of the worst examples to show you of how email can quickly break trust. Let me show you this one. This was somebody who emailed. It says, "Hi Jeff, my name is blank." I've obscured the names here to protect the innocent. We've had a great time at Inbound, which is a HubSpot marketing conference in November. Got to meet a lot of awesome folks and HubSpot partners. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet you. Well, the reason this person didn't get to meet me was because I wasn't there. So she obviously bought some sort of list where I was registered, thought I went to the conference. I didn't actually go to the conference last November. So there's an instant little break of trust there. And then she says, I wanted to reach out, I wanted to introduce myself and see if Globalia handles influencer marketing and blogger outreach for clients. Well, my company is called Next After. It's not called Globalia. She still wants me to schedule a private walkthrough and schedule my own demo. But it's clear that she doesn't know who I am. So there's a lot of trust, opportunity for trust here, and I think she was actually doing some of the right things, trying to, but without understanding that I wasn't at this conference and without understanding what my company is actually named, there's been a huge break of trust there. So this is early, right? This is early on. I'm not going to even click or think about clicking to her demo because she's broken the trust kind of at the ground floor. Let me show you another one. This is an email this box received from an author of the #1 book on flipping apartments, which got to be a pretty narrow category. They said this: "Dear friend, I'm super excited to release my book. I've taught this information to over 1,000 in the last 12 months. I don't know what that is, 1,000 people or cats or something. I cover every area from why flip apartments to how to execute due diligence to understanding how to price apartments by calculating the cap rate. I also," and then nothing there. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe they're trying to make it feel like it came from a person because people make mistakes. But this person is trying to get me to trust a couple of things. Number one, trust them with my time to read this book, but also trust that they're the expert on how to finance, find, and fix and flip apartments, which is a really complex process. And honestly, I don't trust them because they don't know who I am. They call me friend, and they didn't even finish out some of the copy in the email, so that tells me something about how much I should trust the copy in this book, right? Final one, this is a special 2-for-1. This is an email we received that was offering us marketing emails. So a really poor marketing email trying to sell me more marketing emails. Year-end dedicated HTML blast special, finished 2016 strong with these amazing HTML discounts. Get yours before they disappear. Again, we've protected the names to protect the innocent, but this person is actually trying to sell me email marketing through really, really bad email marketing. No trust has been built. I don't actually believe that they'll do what they say they do, so I haven't even taken that first step. So as we look at this and we look at email and say, how can we move people from skepticism, to belief, which is really, if you're going to give your money to an organization and not receive anything in return, you have to believe that they're going to do what they say they're going to do with that. There's a key factor in there that we're going to explore today, and that factor is how we build trust to make our email appeals more effective. And when I say trust, as we're moving people towards belief, like what we have to do is actually believe that, number one, they trust this person, and number two, the organization will do what it says it's going to do. We're going to look at 5 different elements of a fundraising email and then 3 different metrics. We're going to look at the Cinder, the subject line, the email design. We're going to look at the copy and not only how it looks but how it sounds, and then the call to action. We're going to look at 3 metrics here: the open rate, click-through rate, and conversion rate. conversion in this case meaning donations. You know, I used to think that they were kind of, these elements were grouped into the metrics they actually affected. So you kind of had Cinder and subject line that were leading towards open rate. Design and copy had a big impact on click-through rate, and then your call to action was one of the primary drivers for your conversion rate, because that's when you ask people to do what you're asking them to do, and if the call to action is good enough or clear enough, then they will do it. But what we're going to find out through a lot of research is that it's actually a lot more complicated than that. Cinder, yeah, it definitely affects open rate. Trust is built through the Cinder and the subject line, but it also affects click-through rate. If people trust the Cinder, they're more likely to click, and we'll show you some research. It also affects conversion rate. If people are going to, you know, people give not just to faceless organizations, but to people. And we'll find that, you know, subject line, yes, has a huge impact on open rate, also has a big impact on click-through rate. You know, the subject line does not exist in a vacuum. It's not just designed to do one thing to get you to open the email. It's designed to get you to start a mental conversation. And if it doesn't connect to the rest of the email, you know, then there will be, you'll see declining results after you're open. You know, the design has a big impact on click-through rate, also has a big impact on conversion rate. The copy has a huge impact on click-through rate because you have to motivate them with the copy. Also has a massive impact on conversion rate. And the call to action really has an impact on click-through rate. Sometimes you can do things with your call to action to sort of game click-through rate, but you're actually going to see a huge impact on conversion rate because call to action affects that as well. So without further ado, thanks for walking through that initial theoretical step and understanding what we're trying to do here is build trust, move people up the mountain to the macro yes by taking them from a place of skepticism to a place of belief and building trust. So let's talk about the first element here, the Cinder. The Cinder is something that maybe a lot of organizations don't think about. I want to show you some examples today that I received. This is just today in our inbox. Of some Cinders. So you see a bunch of different ones here. You see some names, Dr. David Jeremiah. You see some organizations, Mercy Ships, Live Strong. You see some names and organizations. So Stefan Radalik from Feed, something that got cut off there. Louise Adler from somewhere in America. You see kind of this in between. The Daily Signals, obviously, it's a brand. Back to the Bible is also a brand. Turning Point. A brand in an organization. So there's a lot of different Cinders. I'm kind of curious. I'd love to ask you, I'm going to launch this poll real quick and you can give me your answer. Was the Cinder of your most recent email, was it actually your organization's name or a person's name in your organization? I just launched that poll. If you would just take a sec and give me some answers. Curious to see, and there's no personal reveal here. You don't have to, if you think there's a right answer, there really is no right answer. We'll show you that in a sec. But tell me, was it an organization's name or a person's name? I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds to vote. All right, closing that poll. About 75% of you voted. The other 27% chose to abstain rather than reveal the true results. It looks like 62% of you are using a person's name from your most recent email appeal. That's interesting. There's a couple people in each organization that can send an email. You know, it could be the president of your organization. It could be kind of the figurehead. It could also be a person on your development team. You know, almost 40% of people are using an organization name. That's not necessarily bad, but you know, we want to challenge that. We want to say, hey, is that the best thing that we could possibly be doing? Could we actually increase results from our fundraising emails by simply you know, sending it from a person rather than an organization? Well, that's actually a very, very easy and testable concept to test. I want to show you something that we have developed, and it's on the walls of our office here. As piece of Article 1 from the Fundraisers Creed, I'm going to read it to you. It says, we believe people give to people, that people don't give to organizations or from websites. People give to people. Fundraising is not about programs. It is about relationships. This is something that we found to be a fundamental truth. As we've researched and tested across all of these different organizations and verticals, we found that people really want a connection with somebody. Even if they've never met that person, it doesn't mean they actually have to have a relationship with them. There's a perceived relationship. I give to these people, I give to that person in the work they are doing, even if I never meet them. Let me show you an example of this in action, or rather an example of this not happening. I received an email not too long ago from an organization called Big Brothers Big Sisters. There's two things that are happening here. Number one, if people truly do give to people, then this stuck out to me. Number one, because it came from an organization. So organizations, it's difficult for an organization unless it becomes self-aware to send emails. But it also told me that this was implicitly a one-way conversation. And there's a lot of organizations out there I know that have do not reply or some sort of info. And maybe you do want it to come back to kind of an anonymous inbox, but remember, people have names and they also have reply email addresses. So maybe something you want to test there. Let me show you some experiments from our research library that illustrate this concept. This was from a group called World Concern. They do international relief up in Seattle, all across the globe. And they sent this email out. There's a couple weird characters in here because the screenshot is from Jacinta Tegman, comma, World Concern. And then they sent a test, hey, just from Jacinta Tegman. The hypothesis behind this was that when you include a brand name next to a person's sender name, next to the actual name, you may actually defeat trust. And the reason is because you're saying, hey, you may not know who I am, so I'm trying to qualify it by adding this brand name to this to the email sender line here. We tested this. We sent each one to half the file. We saw a 44.7% increase in open rate when we removed the brand name. So I'm not telling you right now, hear me out, I'm not telling you that you're doing something wrong by sending from an organizational name. I'm just saying you might want to test this. You might see an increase in results just by changing the name. Now there are a couple of factors here. I want to show you one more. That we tried this and we drank our own, or took our own medicine. This is Tim Kachuriak, my partner, sent this out when we were promoting our Turning Facebook Likes into Donors ebook, and we said, hey, maybe people don't know who Tim Kachuriak is. Maybe we haven't developed enough presence, in the marketplace for them to know that. So we kind of hedged our bets. We said, hey, let's send it out from next after. And sad thing is, we saw a 10% decrease in open rate because of that. Because what we're doing is saying, hey, I'm Tim Kachuriak. You might not know me, so here's a little bit more about me. And that is instantly telling people, hey, I might not know this person, or at least they don't think I know who they are. We also saw an impact here because as trust is built, the sender name doesn't just have an impact on open rate. If you get a lower open rate, you're going to get fewer clicks, typically, because fewer people are going to engage with your email. But there's a compounding effect that happens here. It wasn't just a 10% decrease in click-through rate. It was actually a greater decrease in click-through rate because they didn't, the recipient thought we didn't know that they knew who we were, right? So we had to reintroduce ourselves, and there was a breach in trust there. Cinder has an impact on subject line. These subject lines don't just exist in a vacuum. I got this email not too long ago, and it said your membership expires soon, and there's a lot to be said about that subject line. I mean, I don't know whether it was the best one they could have sent because I didn't see any tests they were running. So I was like, oh, my membership expires soon. Something I belong to is actually getting ready to run out. There's a lot of things that happen there, anxiety and fear of loss. I don't want my membership to expire. The problem was it came from KERA Member Center, which is a local public radio and television station. So, there's some sort of, it may be telling me, yes, my membership expires soon, but, this member center apparently has become self-aware and started firing off emails here. So there's while I may care about that membership, I may not exactly trust who it's coming from as opposed to a person on the membership team. Let me show you one more. My breast cancer patients need your continued support. Well, this is a cause that's near and dear to my heart, and it's actually a very well-worded subject line because it seems to be coming from a person, right, and someone who works with patients and they need support. So I might actually be motivated to do that, but I see it came from Susan G. Komen, who is a brand, right, and someone on the brand police decided to put the registered trademark on there, which people don't normally do. So whether or not I actually thought Susan G. Komen is a real person, she was. There's something taking it away. So Cinder name has a big impact, even on the subject line. The believability. You could have the best subject line in the world, but your Cinder name might actually be stealing its thunder. So I want to give you at the end of each of these elements an action item to test a personal sender instead of your organization's name. And then if you are, like 62% of you were, if you are using a personal sender, I want to make sure that your subject line agrees with that. And we're going to talk about subject lines here in a second. Also want to make sure that if you are testing a personal Cinder, one caveat, make sure that you're giving them something to reply back to. And then the second angle of this is that make sure that when they reply back that you're actually fulfilling on the promise that you're making by sending them an email from a person. Not only that it can reach a person by having an effective reply to email, but that it also that you're replying and actually following up with these folks. It's customer service. It can kind of seem like grunt work, but if we're building a donor file based on a bunch of people who trust our organization, we have to build trust by actually following through on these things that we're trying to encourage them to believe. It's not enough just to get them to believe it. We actually have to fulfill it. Second element, the subject line. I want to show you some subject lines we received today in this inbox. Watch, you transformed these Americans. I don't know if these are good or bad. They all have different little elements about them. Obviously, this person is trying to tell me to watch something. That's kind of a common best practice you see is, put video or audio or podcast in all caps to let people know what it is. Something interesting to test, because it might actually let them know that it is something and it's something they don't want to see. Here's another one. We've raised $167,500 in 21 days. Good for you. You don't need me. Here's another one. Shrike hunting practice. Quirky flamingos. The calls of a meadowlark. Something to do with nature there. You can't imagine what I saw in Zimbabwe. Actually, to me, that sounds like somebody wrote it. Warning: this photo is awful, but is important. I'll pass. Thank you very much, and thank you for praying. So look at these and just think, which of these might have actually come from people? Do people actually write subject lines from this? Subject lines are interesting because when we're writing them, and I write them all the time, I know you do, you're staring at a blank box and you're trying to fill it in. You're trying to think, what should I write? And I want to challenge you that sometimes the best subject line might not be the one that just gets the most opens, but the one that actually builds the most trust. And you build trust by making sure that, or trying to do your best to make sure that the person on the other end believes that you wrote that a person wrote it, that someone who they might be able to engage in with some sort of relationship and support wrote that. I got a subject line that I threw in literally 3 minutes before we came onto this broadcast because it was so bad that I wanted you to revel in its glory. Register today for pre-campaign planning for the CEO corrected link. So obviously there's something that happened before this that I didn't see, and they just wanted me to know from the subject line that this has the corrected link. This is a pretty big deal. These folks are doing some sort of series about campaign planning for the CEO, like big deal capital campaign planning, and the subject line may have caused me to question whether I trust their expertise in that, not in that. Even if they are the most, the greatest experts in capital campaigns, they've raised billions of dollars in them. I have a kind of an issue with this because they're letting me know, that following up from getting a corrected link and putting that in the subject line, which has an impact on trust. I'll talk about the most famous subject line maybe ever. Is this one from 2008, I believe, when Barack Obama was running for president. He was well known for this. It got publicized. You guys have probably all seen the report that came out called Inside the Cave, and they talked about this a lot, this concept of hey, and how this had the biggest open rate of any email in his campaign, and it raised a lot of money too. This is interesting. A lot of people, you saw this replicated after this happened, and people said, let's do this sort of thing. But I want to talk about what this sort of thing was. Subject line, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has a great impact on whether people perceive the following email to be real. And I honestly think this was, they were a political campaign. They had a limited amount of time, and so they were trying to raise as much money as possible and get as much engagement as possible. And so they're willing to take these sort of tactics. Whether or not this would work with a long-term relationship that you're trying to build, however, is a different story. I think a lot of people open this because, to this point, who actually believed that a presidential candidate would actually just write a subject line like, hey? But you know what? It worked. But the problem is this really isn't a strategy. This is more of a tactic. And tactics are only going to get you so far before you start to burn people out on them, right? So everyone that started using this, maybe it worked for a while, but there's always a level of diminishing returns. By the way, I got this from a blog post called, I got the image at least from a blog post called 29 email marketing subject lines that guarantee increase the open rate. So if you want to guarantee to increase the open rate, you know, you might want to try that, but I want to warn you that is not a strategy. I want to show you some research here about how subject line tone affects the open rate and how it might actually affect some metrics downstream from the open rate. This is one from Tim Phillips from AFP. The Cinder is a person here. It's great. It's not an organization. The subject line is a little unclear, and it's actually cut off, bringing the greatest message in a generation. And I wanted to talk about something that we don't think about a lot here, but all of the email marketing platforms try to get you to put in. It's called preview text. And there's some preview text that is put in here along with some HTML code that is there's a text for an image. It's inserted in here. And so I might actually get this email from Tim Phillips and say, hey, you know, I'm interested in whatever this greatest message in a generation is. There's no, you know, ideal length of subject line. Sometimes the fact that it's cut off, you know, might be a good thing. It might cause them to look into it and lean in. But something happens to my trust of Tim here when I see web version cropped donate button. It actually kind of tips the hand that it's a marketing email. We've got some research in our library to show specifically testing this preview text. What we found is that preview text, when people are opening an email from a person, generally they see a preview of the message there. If I was to write you an email, you would start to understand what I was trying to communicate with you before you even opened it. So when you see this, it really does tip the hand that this is a marketing email. You know, if you leave that preview text blank, it'll just naturally pick up the first little pieces of your email and start to preview those. So we decided to put this to the test, and we said an invitation. You know, it's personal. It kind of heightens your interest. And then we got all that kind of cruft out of the way of the preview text, and we said, "Dear Jeff," so you can see, oh, he's obviously writing to me. I hope you and your family are well. Your name came up on my list to reach out to today. We put these next to each other, and it's got a 44.7% increase in open rate. Here's the stats behind it. In our research library, we'll show you all of these stats so that you can verify that each of these tests received a statistical level of validity, which means they work 100% of the time. But this shows that our communications must be transformed so that people believe it actually comes from a person. Show you one more. This is from an organization called CaringBridge. A lot of y'all are familiar with. Cinder, Sana Mering is the founder. She sent out a lot of emails for this organization, so she's relatively familiar to a lot of the file. The subject line includes this emoji, which is kind of something I see a lot happening now. Mom's the heart of CaringBridge. And there's this copy, Dear Jeff, mother is another name for love. They had the opportunity to send an email from a person who had received the benefits of CaringBridge, who had actually personally benefited from the service, named Camille Scheel. Now the problem was Camille was relatively unknown to the recipient. I mean, she had never sent an email to the CaringBridge file, so unless happened to be a friend, she was unknown. So they said, hey, let's try to overcome that with subject line personalization, something else that's getting really popular. You amaze me, Jeff. Jeff, I'm Camille, and you, Jeff, you're seriously amazing. You're part of CaringBridge. You see this, and there's something that happens here. You may not know this person, but this person knows you. And so we put these next to each other. You see from Sana, the well-known Cinder on the left, and from Camille on the right, the unknown Cinder that obviously knows who I am is saying something. 137.2% increase in open rate, which led to actually a big increase in donor conversion as well. You know, the question as always is like, at what point does this also become a diminishing return? You know, should you stuff every email subject line with personalization? Well, no, you have to test into that. But I wanted to show you, you know, there are ways to overcome unknown people emailing your file. You might be thinking about this if you're part of the 40% of people who sent organizational or sent their email appeals from the organization. You're saying, hey, this person doesn't know me from Adam. Why would they open an email from me? Well, it actually might shake things up, especially if you can show in some way that you know who they are and develop some sort of initial belief or trust. You know, here's one that I actually sent myself. We were looking at this. Our next live broadcast, we were promoting one of these broadcasts a little earlier this year, and we said, hey, our next live broadcast is kind of organizational centric. You know, what if we actually said, hey, I'm following up, since this was actually the second email we had sent about this live broadcast, and we saw a 109% increase in open rate when we made it a more personal email that suggested that we might have had a previous contact with them. But the cool thing is we also saw a 19% increase in click-through rate because we built that trust through the subject line step. Here's one more. First United is a church in Vancouver, and they sent out an email. They just had 2 words added to the end of the subject line. You see here on the left, spring cleaning is in full swing at First United, and then on the right they added the words join us. So there was some sort of hint that there was going to be a call to action, and they saw a 42.2% increase in click-through rate through this email because they started to build to, or at least preview the conclusion they were going to ask of the reader, which was to join them. So an action item there. Look in your sent mail. It's actually a really great, if you look at your sent mail and see the emails that you send, how do you write subject lines? You know, find a natural way to communicate a subject line. But I want to warn you about something. You know, going back to the Obama hey example, you know, not every natural subject line means it's good. A subject line is not designed just to game the open. There are a lot of subject lines that you could use that would definitely get people to open the email, but if it doesn't connect with a copy, then it's going to be an unbroken chain, or it's going to actually break the chain, rather, of micro yeses. Remember, we're trying to take people on a journey here. We're trying to take them from skepticism to belief by building trust. And so these all have to connect, because if our subject line doesn't connect to our copy, then they will know. I think it's actually intuitive that people know when they're being gamed, when they're being marketed to. Their shields go up, and all of a sudden they're no longer able to, they're no longer willing to continue with us on that journey. We'll talk about the design of fundraising emails. There are a lot of folks out there that you know, kind of use the template that you have, and you may say, I'm not able to afford anyone who can design me a better template. Well, I want to show you some research that might suggest that the best template might be no template at all, especially if you're sending from a person and not an organization. Because when I want to send an email to my mother, I don't load up my favorite email template and fill it in. What I do is I open up a blank email and I send it to her, and it's all text. And it may not be pretty, but the message is actually what ends up getting highlighted. And so there's an effect there. And you know, what's interesting is we receive emails from people all the time. We understand that when I receive an email from an actual person, it's not going to have a template. So why do we think that our marketing templates need to be so flashy? Let me show you another example here from CaringBridge. Just kind of the squint test over here on the left and right, you can kind of see the difference. Number one, on the left, the control has a big image. It's got a header there at the top. It's got a little text at the top that was meant to be part of the preview text, and it's got this big old button. And then on the right, we kind of stripped a lot of that out. We kept the logo at the top for this test because we were wanting to make sure that we were you know, controlling just enough elements to be able to get a result. But there's a distinct difference in terms of there's no box that this is contained in any longer, and the call to action has just a link there. So you know, this is a heavily designed email. It's sent from the founder. It makes these calls to action with these big buttons. We tried to mimic what we call Outlook emails, or the way an email actually looks when someone sends it to you. Sent it from a member of the development team, Kelly Espy. There were no designed elements except the logo, and there was actually a signature in this one as well, which is kind of funny. It's kind of something that's copied over from direct mail. You know, there's people don't actually sign their emails. I don't know about you, but I don't. You can see the two here. There was a 6.3% increase in open rate, but there was also a 32.5% increase in click-through rate. So a very slight increase in open rate, but people believed it because we had taken some of the marketing feel out by adjusting the design. So maybe ratcheting down your design. It's actually relatively simple in almost any email platform to use no template at all. So maybe actually removing design elements from your email might produce an increase in either open rate or click-through rate. I want to show you another one from CaringBridge, how the design of a fundraising email affects click-through rate. We changed a lot of elements on that last one, but we only changed one element on this one. This is actually from a donor. His name is Rick Lalim. He's unknown to the audience. This is the first time he'd ever emailed the audience, but he sent this templated email, which is, it was intended to give some context to this. It wasn't just, you know, let's send an email template. It was like, these people don't know who I am. Maybe if they see me, they can understand and have a closer relationship. And so these images were not just let's throw some images in. It was trying to give context to the ask. There's a big button there for a call to action. But we said, hey, maybe we should, you know, how is that? How necessary is that? How can we determine how necessary it is that we show people who this person is? Maybe the message is compelling enough it doesn't need it. So we made a control that stripped it out, just put the logo. It still had a button in there, and actually had the signature as well. We can see the control and the treatment right there. There's an 80.3% increase in click-through rate. So 80% more people said yes to the very next step. Now that doesn't mean that 80% more people gave a donation, But we got to remember, there's all these micro yeses. We're trying to get people to trust us enough to go to the next step. And in this case, we found that removing some of these elements actually increased trust because it made it more believable that the email had actually come from a person. 100% level of statistical confidence on that. You know, we have to make sure that we're not tipping our hand and letting people know that this is, in fact, marketing. Here's one from our friends at Hillsdale College. This is a video, so this is not a fundraising ask, but we're trying to get people to take action and watch this. It was cultivation, right? And so there's this, you know, kind of heavy email with a header and a signature as well. We took those things out, stripped it down, and saw a 19.6% increase in click-through rates. So some of these tests, I hope, give you inspiration of things that you might be able to include and test in your emails to increase your response. We actually tested a signature specifically because I mentioned that with this Hillsdale appeal. I was actually trying to get people to come take a free online course from them. It's interesting. The subject, or sorry, the signature here is on the control actually has 3 calls to action. So there are many more opportunities to click, right? When we removed the signature image, we also removed 2 of the calls to action. It had only 1 link. So we said, hey, we're going to try and increase believability. What we did was we thought, hey, how do you actually put a link in copy? Do you highlight copy and link it up? Maybe sometimes, but most of the time people just click paste and paste in an actual link there. So if we're actually going to make people believe and build trust that someone at the college is sending them, in this case, Dr. Arn, who's their president, is sending them an email, then you know we're actually going to paste the single link in there and remove the signature because most people don't sign emails. We saw a 12.9% increase in click-through rate there with 100% level of confidence. Had a slight effect on you know, the signature may have had a slight effect on reducing the trust of the sender, combined with the way that we linked up those calls to action. But you know, a 12% increase in click-through rate means at their scale, it means almost 5,000 people, more people clicked through that email and took that next step. Here's one more for you from Dallas Theological Seminary. I'm going to move through this quickly. You know, I'm not trying to say that all design in emails is bad. This is a calendar year-end email. They had a big challenge gift. They have a direct call to action to make a gift. We wanted to test, hey, could we drive more urgency by adding this countdown clock? Now you may say, I thought you just told me to strip all the imagery out of my email. Well, maybe just some imagery can actually be effective and can actually get people to understand either the gravity or the urgency of this ask. So we included a countdown clock just in the email, and it resulted in a 51% increase in response rate. Now that is not click-through rate, that is not open rate, that is response rate. People were 51% more likely to give because they understood the urgency through this visual portrayal. So I'm not saying that all images are bad. It's not a bad thing, but we have to be willing to test these things and discover you know, what motivates our donors, what builds the most trust for them, and what activates them to take the actions that we are asking them to do. Your action item here, if you're using a template, try stripping design elements out. I know that a lot of you said you weren't using a template, so I want to talk about what you actually say, not just how it looks, but what you say, because we found that tone can be one of the primary factors that encourages people to actually make the next step, build trust, and make a donation. So let's talk about the copy for a second. I'm talking about personal tone in an email, and I want to show it kind of the next step of a CaringBridge test that we showed earlier here. You know, CaringBridge traditionally their email had this branded template, these large buttons. We had stripped all that out and proven it, and we wanted to say, you know, we wanted to start looking now that we had reduced the copy. We wanted to say, hey, how can we make this copy more effective? How can we build more trust that this is coming from a member of the development team? So Kelly was sending this email again. It says hello, first name, and obviously it was filled in. That was just a test. When your world has been turned upside down, every connection counts, every bit of strength, every heart brought together. Now this may sound like to me this sounds like copy from a copywriter. This is kind of how copywriters talk. One thing that we started testing over the past 2 years that has given us some of the most impressive lifts in fundraising response is moving from copywriter centric language, which is kind of meant to be read, to words that people might actually use, which actually kind of resonate in our donors' heads and build trust with the recipients. So we're going to take a bit of that hypothesis that maybe by using more natural tone, we could actually resonate and get a higher response rate. So we created this other email. says this: hello, first name. I know you've been using CaringBridge recently to stay connected to your loved ones, and I hope it's been a source of strength for you. So just the way that we kind of changed the intro to this email sounds radically different. It gives relevance to the ask. It says, I know you've been using CaringBridge, because we were sending this out to people who visited the site. We took the branding and we moved it from the top of the email down to the signature block, and we really made a clear ask. And we said, CaringBridge is supported by donations from people who use it. If you'd like to make a donation, your gift will be doubled by a generous donor if you use this link to make your gift. Click here to have your gift matched. You see the two next to each other. We moved from the button copy to the single link there, and saw 145% increase in conversion rate. So again, that is not open rate, that is not click-through rate, that's conversion rate. 145% more people made donations because they felt and they believed that it actually came from a person who they trusted. And keep in mind, these people don't know Kelly. Most of these people don't know Kelly, the vast majority of them. But if you actually communicate like a person, you're able to actually build those sort of relationships with them. One more from our friends at Americans for Prosperity. They have these images in their email, right? And it's like, maybe sometimes you can write the most personal email in the world, but if you have this, there's not a technical template here, but there are these images that really, from the squint test, kind of give away what you're actually asking them to do. So we took some of those things out. We included a single link there. We cut and pasted this raw link. You see the control and the treatment there. There was a great personal tone. It started, the control started, I know you're busy, so I'll keep this short. That's how people talk. But we saw that it was a 91% increase in conversion rate because the tone might have been right, but it didn't match on what we were trying to replicate in their minds, which is that this actually came from a person. One more for you here. This is actually a pretty fascinating example that was transformative for an organization. A group called Jews for Jesus in San Francisco. It starts with a strong statement. This email, this kind of part of their monthly send. It says, a growing number of Christian leaders recently made statements that no mission work should go towards ... It's a really strong kind of authoritative statement. It really gets right to the point right off the bat. And the image is here. It kind of seems to be pasted in and aligned there to the right. So we said, we looked a little further down. There's a link and a button copy that might actually give them two options, and there's the signature, which is not native to personal emails. So we said, let's take a different approach for this. We said, your first name, I hope you and your family are well. Since I know you have a heart for the Jewish people, I wanted you to send a quick note about the burden that's been on my heart. And really tried to say, hey, how do people talk? We read it out loud. We try to give context and qualification. Since I know you have a heart for the Jewish people, we presented this as information rather than like taking a stance on something. And then we actually repeated the personalization down there. You see two other first name options. We gave the link some context. Here's a special link today to make a donation. And then we made an email signature plain text. You can see the control and the treatment there. We saw 109% increase in click-through rate, which is pretty fascinating. But we also saw a 304% increase in donor conversion. And this is something that actually held up over a full year of trying this, of testing this new personal tone. They had stripped out a lot of the elements, and they saw increases from that because people believed it. But the truth is, people might have believed it. They might have seen it. They might have taken their marketing defense shields down a notch. But that doesn't necessarily mean they believe that it's coming from a person. It actually, this is transformative for an organization because it increased the response they were getting from their email appeals by about 300, 400% over a year's time. So that's a significant amount of revenue. The founder, David Brickner, the executive director, who was writing these emails, also wanted to be the recipient. So we put his actual email address, and he told me, he said, you've created a great problem for me. I said, what's that? And he said, people write back. I was apologizing. He said, no, it's great. I love talking to donors. They get to tell me what they're thinking, and I get to fulfill on the promise. And I think that's something that we realize the most underrated marketing metric sometimes is the reply. If people reply to your email, then they actually believe that it wasn't marketing. They believe that you actually said something to them. So make sure that you have a valid reply email, and make sure that you follow up and on the perception that you've created. So an action item here: read your emails out loud. Have someone read them back to you. Does it sound like a person would actually write that? Is it how you talk? Is it how you write your emails? There's sometimes nuanced things there that keep our donors from properly trusting us enough to click through and to make a donation. Finally, I know we're short on time, the call to action. what we ask people to do and how we ask people to do it. It's kind of the final step in the micro yeses of the email, and it really determines a lot of whether they will click or not. Here's a test from the Illinois Policy Institute. You can see they have this call to action here. We need your help. Find out how you can advance responsible spending and other reforms instead of more tax hikes. So the call to action, even though it's a donation on the other end, we're saying find out how you can. So we're not being clear, right? So we said, what if we just told them, your generous donation will help get this plan in front of every lawmaker so they can face the facts. Illinois doesn't need any new taxes. Here's a link to donate and support. We're very clear, 246% increase in conversion rate, right? So our call to action, we thought, hey, we might get more clicks if we said find out, if we were kind of like keeping it behind this curtain and they had to click through to find out. But what if we just told them, you know, it's a click-through rate, there's a strong correlation with motivation, right? Not all clicks are created equal. So people might click to find out, but that doesn't mean they're interested in giving. Now, you want to find a balance, because if you just ask and make donations all the time, you might get people who know they don't want to give, you know, to take the next step where they might actually be motivated to give. But huge increase in click-through rate, or sorry, in conversion rate there, by increasing the intensity and the clarity of the ask. Here's another one from Harvest Ministries. They had this premium they were offering that said, "We'll send it to you, and thanks for your donation to Harvest." And they did this thing with an ask string, which is kind of copied over from direct mail. Would you give a gift of $35, $45, or more today? And you know, we wanted to do some research around that, understand like people don't normally ask for that. You know, if you're asking for something, you might just suggest one amount. Would you give me $100 so I can do this thing? So we're going to do a couple of tests there. Number one, we're going to test to see if we asked for a larger amount, how that might affect conversion rate and average gift. And then we just wanted to leave it open-ended and say, hey, maybe we should suggest no amount. Just ask them to give generously. What we saw that the larger amount produced a decrease in click-through rate, although it was a slight increase in average gift. So fewer people were interested because it was kind of a higher bar. But we also saw that a huge increase in click-through rate when we didn't, you know, we communicate this in a very personal way, in a way that someone might actually do it. And sometimes we write this copy and we say, this is the way we've always done it. You know, we feel afraid about not suggesting an amount. Maybe they won't give that amount, but maybe they'll actually give more if you allow them to make the decision. One more here for you from DTS. They had this third email in the calendar year in campaign. Will you help grow the kingdom this year with an investment in DTS? And we said, hey, maybe we can get you know, maybe a slightly less clear call to action, and you know, get more people to click through and actually understand what's on the page. So you see here there's long copy. This other email is a very short copy. The same copy was actually on the landing page. We just wanted to get people out of the email and onto the landing page where they could actually give. So you can see the control, the treatment. The control has the direct ask. All the information is in the email. The treatment has the shorter email, but that also has you know, the lower bar to click. And we saw a 481% increase in click-through rate. But we saw a 67% decrease in conversion rate because they were not properly motivated to give at that point. I'm going to skip this last one. It's another one from the Illinois Policy Institute. We saw a huge increase in conversion rate by being very direct and by asking. And one thing we don't do a lot in our emails is ask them if they will give. You see over here on the control, it says your generous donation will help pressure lawmakers to support this no tax hike budget. On the one on the right, we said, will you support this effort? Sometimes we actually have to ask them, will you do this? We saw a huge increase in conversion rate when we did that. So test the directness of your call to action. And this may seem silly as a fundraiser, but be willing to ask for the gift. Don't just declare what their gift will do. So those are 5 elements about how we can do this very thing, how we take people from skepticism to belief, and do that by developing trust through our emails. How do we get our donors to trust us, and that we are, you know, that we are real people, and that we are, you know, there's someone on the other end of this. I've got good news for you, though. I know that we've shown you a lot of research, and there's a reason we show you this research, is because we're not fundraising experts. I don't actually believe that fundraising experts exist outside of your donors. I think that the people who actually know what's going to, you know, cause them to give are your donors, and we just have to find out. You know, you don't have to have all the answers as a fundraiser. You don't have to have this burden on your back all the time of saying, you know, I've got to know what's going to work. You can go find out. I mean, if you need, you know, if you want to do some testing in your email, you've been inspired by this, but you need some ideas. Well, we've got something for that. We've got this research library. You can see all the experiments that we reviewed here today. at nextafter.com/research, as well as many more. There's about 700 in there right now. Also, want to remind you that when you send out an email and you get a maybe a less than desirable return, I like to keep this around my desk very closely from our friend Bob Hartsook, who says, remember, fundraising is hard because donors do not think of money as an encumbrance from which they need to be unburdened, right? They're not looking to give away their money. Even in a great economy, people don't want to give their money away. So that reminds us, we're trying to inspire people to move up this mountain. Email is an incredibly effective way to do that, but we've got to do it by building trust. I think Nathan mentioned earlier the NEO Summit. If you're interested in this sort of stuff and you want to kind of see and network with other people who are challenging convention and who are trying to do these kind of virtuous trust-building relationships through digital channels, you should come visit us in September. Come hang out with us in Fort Worth. There's a great deal going on for that right now. I know we're over time, but I want to answer some questions, so I'm going to give a few minutes here to answer some questions that y'all have sent in. We got one from a woman who said, should I still use a person's name for general newsletters without a direct call to action? Well, I think this, I can't give you an answer of whether it will work, right? But the question is this, does the sender name actually agree with the content? Does it feel like someone wrote it? Because sometimes I see a lot of newsletter templates, this isn't necessarily bad, that look like someone put it together, but it's not from someone. Because we talked about the law of diminishing returns there, and we want to make sure that we aren't wasting a person's an email from a person on an email that is clearly not from a person. So you may want to test that and see, does it actually increase the amount? Just because there's not a direct call to action, most newsletters have some sort of click-through or some sort of measurable metric. At least you can get more people to open and engage with it. So that's definitely an easily testable hypothesis. Another interesting question about email in general, not necessarily about those 5 elements. What do we do with folks that have unsubscribed? Can we ever go back to them to inquire whether they want to return? 2 thoughts here. Number one, there are email services out there that will send an email, at least an offer, to your unsubscribes on behalf of a third party, in essence. So it's not you sending them the emails. Another way you can reach these folks is by uploading that list into Facebook and showing them ads, trying to get them to opt back in. A great use of Facebook ads because they can match an email list to a targeted segment of users. So as you're looking to grow your email file, and maybe you're saying, hey, we didn't use a lot of these strategies earlier and it kind of bit us, and we got a lot of people who unsubscribed who didn't believe that we were the real deal. We want to get a second shot at them. Well, contact a couple providers. I can if you email me, I'll let you know who they are, who might be able to send an email on your behalf from a third party to get those people to opt back in, or target them on Facebook. There is hope for people who have engaged with you at some point, maybe even given to you at some point, of re-engaging those folks. I got another last one here. What is a good way to obtain the first name of email subscribers who subscribed before we began requiring names? This is interesting. We work with the National Breast Cancer Foundation here in North Texas, and they had a similar issue. They had gotten a list of emails through an app download, and they had done some testing to find out that it was actually valuable to be able to address people by their first name. It was going to cost them because they needed to go offer these people something, and so what we did was we put together a free ebook offer, much like the ones you'll see in our Turning Likes into Donors book. We put together an ebook about how to care for people with breast cancer and a healthy living guide, and sent it out to them. And we sent them a link that sent them to a landing page that asked them to basically, we pre-filled their email and asked them to give us their first and last name in exchange for the ebook, and many of them did. And as we've worked through several months, we've cycled these people through offers to get that information appended. So now we know we can have a stronger relationship, build more trust with these folks by addressing them by their first name and having their last name on file as well. So great questions. My email, jeff@nextafter.com. You can always shoot me an email and I will reply because I am a real human being like the examples that we have shown here. Anyways, I hope this has inspired you. Some of you may have emails that are going out Friday or Saturday, and I want to encourage you. It doesn't take long. Most platforms can do it, to just set up a test And if you have a small email file, that's okay. You may need to split your file in half and not do like a 20% and 20% split, like a 50-50 split, to get a valid result. That was one question we had about sizes. It doesn't matter how big your email file is, you can always test and learn something about your donors. Whether or not you get a big green arrow up and get a big increase, you're learning something about how your donors prefer to be communicated with. If we can help with any way in that, please reach out to us. Hope this has been helpful. Like Nathan said, we will record this and send this out if you want to send this to other people in your organization. But most of all, we hope we've inspired you to more closely examine your email appeals and question whether you're actually building trust with these people, whether these people feel like this is coming from some sort of email marketing machine, or whether people believe it's coming from a person to which they might be inspired to give. Thanks. Hope you have a great afternoon. Again, Jeff@nextafter.com if you have questions, and we'll talk to you soon.